Hello everyone, and thanks for watching this course. In our previous lecture we worked on this little setup that is called logic, and we have attached some of the scripts to our players, to their hands, decks and tables, and also we've discussed this concept of having a script that is called turn maker that will be different for our human players and for our AI players. And in this lecture, I wanted to return and discuss some of the new scripts that are meant for the visual part of our game. For example, we have a whole new bunch of our dragging scripts that will be used in the game. So instead of having these scripts that we have right now, for example, on our targeted spell card, we have our drag on target test and our script draggable test with actions. So instead of all these scripts, we would like to attach actual scripts that will be used in our game. So I'll remove these components from our targeted spell card, and I'll attach first our draggable script, and second script, drag spell on target. This public property of type targets will be set in code, so we don't need to touch it in the inspector, and even if we do, it will be reset for each individual card. And after I've done this, I can just hit apply. For our ordinary spell card that is not meant to be dragged onto any target in particular, we did not have any dragging scripts at all, so I'll just minimize all these components and I'll attach draggable script straight to this card. So I'll grab this draggable script and drag spell no target. And then I'll apply these changes to our prefab. For our creature cards, we also have a special script that will control dragging behavior for these cards. So we should also have our draggable component, and we'll have another script that is called drag creature on table. And all these scripts, drag spell no target, drag spell on target, they are those scripts of type dragging actions that control whether or not we can drag this game object right now. What happens when we stop dragging this game object? Was this dragging action successful? So they figure out all these things for us for each individual game object in our game. And finally, for our creatures, we also have the targeting system here, and we want to have our new custom dragging scripts. So I'll remove these old dragging components, we'll have draggable here, and we'll have drag creature attack script of type dragging actions here. Now, once we have attached these scripts to our prefabs, if we try to drag these game objects in test mode, something might not work because they actually rely on some other scripts. They will want to figure out, was our drag successful, and now we don't have all those logical elements, but they will all work in the final version of the game. So if you want to have fun and test your dragging features, then you should revert back to those previous settings, or you can have another prefab with our dragging test scripts. And for creatures, we should also apply these changes to our prefab. I'll disable this prefab's game object. And we had some new scripts in our visual folder as well, so let's have a quick run through all those new scripts. We already had this better card rotation script, and this script that is called creature attack visual should be attached to our creatures, and it contains all the code that will be responsible for showing our creature's attack. So actually moving our creature towards the target and then moving it back to its original position. So let's enable our prefabs back. Let's find our creature and let's attach this creature attack visual to our creature. There's another important script that is here in the bottom of our visual folder, and it's called where is the card or creature. And it's important because it will track current location and state of our cards and creatures in the game. So this script should be attached to each of our prefabs. It has this interesting enum that is called visual states, and the options for this enum are transition, lower hand, top hand, lower table, top table, or dragging. So the script tracks if our game object is currently in one of these states, and also for the cards in our hand, it is responsible for their sorting order. So when our cards are in the hand, they will actually overlay, and we have to figure out the correct sorting order for them. So I think it's safe to just select all of these game objects and drag our where is the card or creature script onto all these game objects, all the cards and all our creatures. I'll hit apply. Then let's continue moving from the top in our visual folder. We have already talked about the script that is called GlobalSettings, and there were some references to this script in our previous scripts. So let's finally have it in our project. And I am not completely sure about the nature of the script GlobalSettings. As I already said, I use this script just as a dump of different references that haven't made it to any of our other scripts, but we need to have them somewhere in our project. So I think I'll create a separate game object for our global settings. I'll go to create an empty game object. I'll call this one global settings, and I'll attach the script to our global settings game object. I think probably it's more visual in nature because one of its purposes is to establish the connection with our players. So it is something that should be on our device or on our game client, and it will let our device know that my owner is this lower player and the top player is the opposite player or something like that. So it has references to our players, so we can just establish them right away. I'll drag our lower player here and our top player here. Then we cannot bother with all these fields that are called colors for now, or we should have something green in this card glow color. I think that we can figure this out later. And the alpha, we don't have to forget to bring the alphas all the way up. Otherwise your colors will be transparent and you might think that something else has happened, and while you are trying and figuring out this error in your code, the solution is much simpler. You just didn't set the color correctly. So I'll set this glow color so that we don't make any mistakes. And these colors, card body standard color and card ribbons standard color, they were used to save the colors of our standard beige card. For example, I could have edited the colors on my spell card prefab, and then when it was instantiated, no matter what colors I had there, the game will apply the standard color to that prefab. But in our game, we've made a different decision. We'll just make a convention that we are not editing the colors on our prefabs, and new colors will be applied only if this card belongs to a particular player. We have another header here that says numbers and values, and we have our card preview time, which is now 1 second. Card transition time, it is also 1 second. Card preview time fast and card transition time fast. So let me explain a little about all these values. So when we take the card from our deck normally, first the card will get previewed somewhere over here, and we'll have a special spot for our previews later. So the card will be flipped over, previewed, and then it will travel into your hand. So these times for preview and transition time, they are all set to 1 second. And these times that are called preview time fast or transition time fast, they are used in the beginning of your game when players get their first cards, not to make this process very long. We want to speed this up a little, so the players, they will also draw the cards from their deck, but this whole process, it will happen much faster. So the preview time will be just 0.2 seconds and the transition time will be half a second. And then our global settings is also responsible for holding the references to all our prefabs. So when we'll create a new card or a damage effect or something else, we'll just access this class that is called global settings, and we'll ask for a prefab that we currently need. So I'll lock the inspector on our global settings. I'll go to assets, prefabs, and I'll establish the connection with all these prefabs. So no target spell card in our game is just called a spell card. Then we have our targeted spell card, our creature card, our creature, and then we have this damage effect. We have actually changed some code in our damage effects, but previously it was referring to this global settings class to create damage effects as well, and we might want to change it later. So let's drag our damage effect prefab onto this field. And we also have our explosion prefab. We have not created explosion in our project yet. Explosion is used only once in our game when one of our players loses. Then this little animation for explosion gets shown on top of our player, and then a new game is started or something else happens. So it's just a visual effect, very similar to our damage effect, for example, and we'll make it later. And here in these other references, there is a reference for our end turn button to change its color. So let's find that. I'll go to visual, our rope and end turn button game object, and I'll drag this button onto this end turn button field. Then for our coin card, there's a reference to this coin card asset, but I think that I've changed its location and it will later be located in another class. We'll make a card asset for our coin card later, so now let's not bother with this reference. And then there's a reference to something that is called game over canvas. I think that we haven't gone that far yet, so we'll establish a connection with it later. I think that on this point we should end this lecture. In our next lecture, we'll continue doing pretty much the same thing. So we'll go through all the new scripts that we have and we'll try to attach them to our game objects to make them functional in the game. And later we'll do some troubleshooting, some testing, and we'll actually discuss how all this system works. I would like to thank you very much for watching this course, and I will see you in our next lecture.